Hello, so thanks for tuning into this video. This one is we're going to be looking at the Uno Synth editor, which kind of gets you under the hood a little bit more of the actual hardware, gets you a few more controls that you can't get from the front panel, and also some quite useful sort of integration into whatever DAW you use. I'm going to show you it with Ableton Live. So I've actually got two instances of it open. This one's actually not connected to the Uno at the moment, because you can see it says waiting for Uno, because I've actually got it connected up on the Ableton Live one over here. The reason I've got this one open is you can see we've got the presets option here, which for some reason, and I don't know why, if anybody knows why, please tell me, when I open this up in Ableton Live, basically kind of like as a sort of a VST synth, I don't get access to all the presets, which is weird. I've tried all the different settings and nothing seems to work. So if anybody can help me out on that one, then please let me know. So I thought I'd just show you this bit first, just go over the presets section. So this is quite useful. This is sort of the preset library that I've got. So I've got access to all the factory presets in here from 21 and above. Remember, these are the only ones, because obviously you can't overwrite. Well, I say obviously, but if you've watched the other videos, you will know you can't overwrite 1 up to 20. You can only overwrite 21 up to 100. So very easy if you want to put one of these sounds into your hardware. I've got my presets there, so let's say if I want to go on these Hack Attack ones, if I want analog techno to go on to preset number 30, I just click on it and then I press on here, click to hardware, and that will send it over to the hardware. So very, very straightforward. We've got search feature as well. We can add in like a new category. So if I wanted to add in, I don't know, something like bass presets. Oops. Okay, that's going to give me a new category over here. This is obviously empty at the moment. What I can then do, if I've created a sound on the hardware synth, say this one, I can then take that from the synth and put it into the library. It will stick it back over in there. It won't do it at the moment because it's not connected. And that will be in there, and then I can save those. We've also got some options for loading and well, importing. This is how you get your preset. So if you've got like a preset you want to select, sorry, a preset you want to import, you'll just import it into there. So it's fairly standard, kind of straightforward stuff. And you can get stuff from your hardware and send it to the hardware and so on. So if I go over to this one, we've also got some load and save functions. Again, this is where if you've got like banks of presets you want to put in, you would do it from that section. So straightforward enough. Let's just look at the settings bit first, which is this bit over here. If we click on there, these are sort of the MIDI settings. So at the moment, connection-wise, I've just got the hardware plugged straight into the laptop via USB, single USB, and then I'm just routing the audio in through a mixer. The editor does work it works on Mac, on PC. You can have it, as I say, as a standalone version, which is the one I was just showing you previously. So you don't need to run it in any kind of DAW. I'm going to just run it in Ableton Live just so I can show you the extra bits you can do with it in there. On iOS, it will run on an iPad. Obviously, you would need the camera connection kit for that. The downside with that is I found you can only run it unless I think you've got a connection kit that does power as well, but I haven't. So I have to run it off batteries. The Uno synth off batteries into the iPad to be able to get it to work, because the iPad doesn't provide enough power to actually power up the hardware unit without that being plugged in. And obviously if you're using that connection, so it took me a while to sort of work that out. So yeah, run it off batteries for connecting up to the iPad. Some kind of sort of global settings here. You can set your MIDI input and output channels, program change messages and so on over here. You can choose your MIDI through settings on or off here. Knob behavior, I have mine set to pass through. You've got pass through, absolute and relative. It's just down to how you want to use those. And then you can set the sync, whether it's internal, external, or USB. Again, I mean, a lot of these are accessible from the unit itself. So that's not very exciting stuff, but it's useful stuff to know all the same. So basically what will happen is, if you can see this dial, the cutoff dial here is now turning. I'm actually just turning the dial on the hardware. So it kind of works both ways. As soon as I turn it on the hardware, it will react instantly on here. If I just play a sequence on the hardware, it kind of works the other way as well. Let's just play this. Oh, hang on, that was a weird sequence. Let's go on to that one. Okay, so if I turn the controls on here, it will of course change the settings on the Uno as well. It's just basically sending MIDI messages. So I mean, straight away, one sort of aspect of that is we could just send some automation. So if we just open up, let's get that out of the way for a second. These are all the, so all I've done is clicked on the little the little triangle there, and all of these we can add as automation lanes. So if I can find the filter cutoff there, okay, so I can then start to draw in just some automation. I mean, this is just going to purely be basically like an automation lane. And if we bring the interface back in, as I now play that, hopefully you can see this now moving. Okay, so it's sent that automation over to it. If I start the sequence playing on the hardware itself, and then just send. Okay, you can hear that's just affecting. So it's kind of like a bit of nice interaction between hardware and software. It's still going. So I can play a sequence on the hardware and send automation to it from here. That might be, you know, a load of automation I want to record, and then record the audio back into Ableton Live, which is quite a nice way of doing it. So it's, yeah, this is kind of like sort of a VST with the sound coming from external hardware. This in itself doesn't produce any sound. You need the hardware with it, but they do work very, very well together. There's no kind of latency issues or anything. It works really, really well. So let's just go through the sections then of each bit. So we've got the oscillator section here, which is, I mean, we've got obviously the shape here. You get a nice sort of visual representation of the. So I'm just playing it on the hardware now as I change that, but you can see the visual representation of the two waveforms that we get. We've got the tune, so a lot of these are obviously accessible from the hardware itself, but we do get a couple of extra things here because you haven't got any pulse width modulation available directly from the front of the hardware itself. So if we just bring this round to a pulse, and in fact I'm just going to take this to my, so yeah, for loading presets I should say, you've got them all on here. You can see I've named a few of mine as well. I'll do that in a second. But what I've done on preset 21 is I've just saved like an initialized patch, which is basically just triangle waves and it's just oscillator 1, because there's no easy way of doing that. So if I want to create a sound, I will just go to preset number 21. That's my initialized patch, and then I can kind of shape whatever sound I want from there. So let's bring that into sort of pulse width modulation area. So we've got a choice here. We can have pulse width modulation or the shape. I'll come on to shape in a second. So pulse width, we can make that change over time based on the filter envelope, which is this one down here. So okay, so you can hear, hopefully, as I play a note. Okay, we're getting pulse width modulation based on this envelope shape. Okay, let's just bring it down. So that's a feature that you don't get from the hardware synth itself, from the front control of that. And we've got pulse width modulation to get like the classic thing based on the LFO speed. So we can dial that into the LFO, and then we've got the LFO section down here, and obviously all the different waveforms that we can use. But that will give us standard sort of pulse width modulation. The other thing we can do is the shape. So this is basically going to do this to this dial, right? So if it's dialed in with this, it's based on the LFO. Okay, so it's kind of, you know, you can do weird stuff with it, and you can also change the shape based on the filter envelope. If we take that down and bring that up. Okay, so some nice sort of additional sound design options that we've got here that you don't get from the front panel of the unit itself. It's a shame we haven't got pulse width modulation on the front, but there you go. It's there's not a lot you can do about that. But obviously you can save these to your presets, and if you want a classic pulse width sound, it will be there. If I now save that, it will send it all to the unit, and it will still play back like that. You've just not got sort of hands-on control of the actual sort of depth of the pulse width here, but from the unit itself. But you've got it from the LFO. So then you've got the same thing basically for Oscillator 1 and Oscillator 2. We then have a mixer section over here, which is self-explanatory. Again, you've got this from the front control panel, but obviously you've got the options to automate all of this stuff within your DAW. Filter, obviously you've got the different filter types here, the driver, envelope, amount. Key tracking, which isn't available. Again, this is another thing that's not available from the unit itself. So key tracking will open up the filter more depending on how high you go up your keyboard. So you've got an extra feature there. In terms of the envelopes, because originally when the synth was released, you didn't have full ADSR control from the front of the synth. You do have that now, but if you want to see your envelope shapes, obviously you get a nice visual representation of it here, which sometimes it's nice to be able to see the shape of the envelope to see where we're at. So we've got the standard envelope section there. LFO, all these are available from the front control panel of the hardware, but you've got that section in there. Again, you've got glide, which is also accessible from the front panel, but we've also got the pitch bend range here. We've got a pitch bend and a mod wheel down here. Now I've actually got this, I've got a launch key 49 hooked up to Ableton Live, and as I move they just kind of map automatically. We've got a mod wheel and a pitch bend, so as I move those on the hardware, okay, they will move based on that. I've also got a push attached as well, which the touch strip on there will do the pitch bend. So let's play something, let's get a... Okay, so that's just me doing it on push. Obviously, if we put the bend range right up, okay, it's going to give us more bend range, and so on. So that's like an extra feature. The delay is the same as we get on the hardware. Mod wheel. This is sort of extra stuff here. So this is kind of like the amount it's going to affect stuff. So if I kind of like dial in all the cutoff and then play the mod wheel, and I'm going to do the mod wheel from the launch key. Okay, so we've got options for like vibrato, which is sort of like the pitch sort of. So yeah, you can go crazy with those, and these are kind of like based on the those performance buttons that you get on the front of the unit itself. So they're kind of like momentary sort of things on that, which we'll come on to in a second, which are these panel buttons here. So yeah, that gives you the mod wheel. Rid of all those. Oh no, sorry, take that to 0. So the panel buttons, these affect the amount that these affect the sound. So let's just turn all these down for now. So the dive amount, so if I just press a button on the keyboard and I'm pressing the dive button, you can hear it changing a little bit if we go to the full extreme. So if I turn all these up to full, you'll sort of hear what happens. So this is kind of basically the depth of what these buttons do on the front panel. So there's the scoop, this is vibrato, the depth of that. Now these three are based on the LFO speed up here. Okay, so I'm pressing the vibrato button there. If I turn that down, okay, we've got the wah and the tremolo. Again, those three will be based on the LFO settings. Okay, I don't think that has any effect on the dive. No, I think they're independent of that. So yeah, we've got more control over the amount of the panel buttons, and again, however you set this, you can send that to the hardware and it will be saved for you. We've got then the velocity amount, which is not going to have any effect if you're playing from the hardware unit itself, because as far as I'm aware, it's not velocity sensitive. But if you're playing from a keyboard that is velocity sensitive, so for example my launch key and also the push, the velocity amount you can have these different settings. So for example, the filter, if I turn that down. So if I press kind of lightly on, I'm playing this off push, and then as I get harder, let's do it off the launch key. Okay, so that's a light press on the key, and then a harder press will open up the filter more. And we can do the same thing with filter envelope LFO rate. So let's put a bit of LFO. Let's do it on the pitch so we can hear it. Let's turn that off. Okay, so that's a kind of like a gentle press, and then a harder press is going to give you more LFO. So it's a bit of kind of expression on your playing with that, if that's the kind of thing that you want. And obviously the velocity, you could program these all in. If you're writing notes in here, you can change your velocities, and that will have that effect on there also. We've then got, and again, I don't think these two are available from the front panel of the synth either. Let's get an ARP going. We've got a swing amount. Oh, hang on. Let's get a different sound. Okay, so we can... I'll come back to that because I don't know, it doesn't affect the ARP. It's just the sequencer for the swing. But we've got gate control. Okay, which is very useful, which again you don't get from the internal internal synth, sort of, well, the front panel synth control. If I play this sequence, we can swing it. Okay, so we've got some swing control as well then. So, useful bit of software this, particularly if you sort of want a nice hybrid software and hardware setup, and basically sort of using this as a standard VST in whatever DAW you use to then record the nice analog sound coming from the synth. And it gives you a lot more access to, it gives you access to a lot more controls that you can't get off the front panel. But, like I said before, you can then just send those over to the synth and it will be saved. And also then gives you access to all your presets on here and the ability to name them as well. So if I load in patch 24, okay, what's this sound like? Okay, so it's kind of like a bass. Okay, it's like an LFO bass wobble pad kind of thing. So what I can then do is store that. So I click on store, and I can then put a preset name in and decide where to save it. So let's call that, I'm going to call it bass throb. Don't know why, but I am. And I'm going to save that to patch 24. So I just click on save, and it's now, if I list down there, okay, I can save all those. So you can see 21 is my initialized patch, 22 is kind of my 303 sound. I've got a sample and hold, and I've named some of these. There's another initialized patch there, I think, as well. So very useful from that point of view, so you can actually see your preset names in here rather than having to think, right, what the hell was patch number 48? What did that sound like? So I think that's pretty much covered everything on here. I'm going to do one more video on the Uno synth, just looking at a little bit of sound design ideas, and I'll probably do about 10 different patches, and then I will make those available to my Patreon subscribers. If you want to download those, I will get those for you. So yeah, quick mention about the Patreon thing. If you want loads of free stuff and patches and just loads of free stuff, check out my Patreon. There is a link in the description to it. There's also a link on the channel header, and there'll probably be an info card pop up somewhere as well. And then the usual things like subscribe, share the videos around, and check out my music on Spotify and all of that. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next part, and also keep an eye out. I'm going to do a series on the Uno drum coming up very soon as well. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.